They called it the void because no one knew what else to call it. It was not space, not a planet, not a wormhole, not anything that made sense. It was just there, a black tear floating in the edge of the solar system like a scar on the sky. Ships had gone. But never came back. Signals vanished within seconds. Satellites melted or went silent like they were swallowed whole. People feared it. Governments ignored it and scientists made guesses, but nothing explained the truth until Earth Command made a decision. They would send one man, just one. They said his name was Stone. No first name, no rank, no emotion. Just Stone. He walked like someone who had nothing to lose. Looked at the void like it had challenged him personally, and maybe it had a crowd gathered at. The launch site, a massive black platform built next to the tier itself. The air was heavy with silence. Even the winds held their breath. Children sat on shoulders. Soldiers stood at attention, and cameras from every country pointed at the man in the black suit. He said nothing as he stepped onto the platform. He didn't wave, didn't smile, didn't pause. Eyes never left the dark wall of the void. It was not just darkness. It twisted like smoke, but stayed still like ice. It pulled at the soul like something old and hungry. Some said it was alive. Some said it was a portal to another universe. Others said it was death wearing a mask. But Stone just called it a door. The voice in his ear told him he had 30 seconds. He nodded once, his hand gripped the strange metal cube strapped to his chest. No one knew what it did, only that it was built in secret. Something Earth had never used before. The crowd didn't know if they should cheer or pray, but then the countdown began. 10, 9, 8. The platform began to hum a low vibration that tickled the bones. 765 energy. Lines lit up along the black metal floor, glowing blue, then white, then red. 4, 3, 2, 1. Stone took one step forward into the black and vanished. No flash, no sound, no ripple, just gone silence. Again, Earth Command watched the monitors, but there was nothing, no signal, no data, no sound, till 3 seconds. Later, a voice came through, not loud, not clear, but real. It was Stone, and he said, "Kel, the man not alone in here." Then the signal died, and the world changed. Command centers across the planet went into full alert. Satellites pointed toward the void, trying to catch anything at all, but the sky stayed black. People asked questions, but no one had answers. Experts filled news channels saying words like anomaly and dimensional fold and quantum interference, but all they really said was they didn't know. In a quiet room deep underground, a group of generals watched the recording again and again. They slowed it down, studied the wave patterns, analyzed every breath of Stone's voice. One general leaned forward and whispered. He sounded calm too. Calm. Another asked the question they were all thinking of. He's not alone in there. Who or what is with him back at the edge of the solar system? The void pulsed once. Just once, like something had awakened. A scientist at a remote observatory caught it by accident. She stared at her screen, then at the stars, then back at the screen, and whispered to herself, "Something's looking back." Meanwhile, in a cold, dark place far from light, Stone opened his eyes. He was floating, but not falling. There's no gravity, no ground, no sky, just endless black. But in the black were shapes, figures, silent watchers. They did not speak, but he could feel their questions. He could feel their eyes, not like looking, more like scanning, searching, weighing him. The cube on his chest glowed softly. It was warm now, like it had recognized something. Stone didn't panic. He didn't move. He just waited because he knew whatever this place was, whatever lived here, it had seen others before him, but now it saw something different, and so did he. The distance, a light appeared, not bright, but steady, not welcoming, but calling. Stone turned toward it, and for the first time since stepping into the void, he smiled, because he realized something. They hadn't sent him to explore, they had sent him to become something, and now whatever was out there had just met its match. Darkness was not the right word for this place. It was more than dark. It was the kind of black that swallowed thoughts, and silence. Breathstone floated in nothing, but it did not feel empty. It felt full of things he could not see full. Of things, watching, listening, waiting. His body did not fall. There was no up, no down, no air, no weight. He reached out, but there was nothing to touch. No ground beneath him, no stars above, only the glow from the small cube strapped to his chest. It pulsed with light like a slow heartbeat. That was the only sound. Soft hum deep inside it, like a whisper meant only for him. Then something moved, not near, but not far, a shimmer, like heat in a distance. It rippled across the dark like a wave without water. Stone tensed, but did not flinch. He had trained for the unknown. He had walked through fire, Snow, blood, and silence, but nothing like this. The shimmer moved closer, then more appeared 10, 20, maybe 100 shapes tall, thin creatures with long arms and glowing eyes. Not made of skin or metal, but something in between. They did not float. They stood, yet there was no ground beneath them. They circled. Him slowly saying nothing. Their eyes did not blink. They tilted their heads. Like curious machines, Stone waited then. One reached out not with a hand, but with something else, yeah. Wave of thought, a pressure in his minde. Question without words. Stone did not understand. But the cube answered for him. It glowed brighter, and the being stopped. Deep silence followed, then suddenly they all dropped to one knee. Stone did not expect that. He had come here, ready to fight, to die, not to be bowed to, but the figures stayed down there. Heads low, their strange bodies still, and then a voice entered his head. Not loud, not harsh, but clear. It said, "You are the key, you have come at last. The others failed, they burned, they screamed, but you carry the light." Stone spoke with his voice. What? Are you what? Is this place why me? The voice did not answer right away. Instead, the space around him changed. Darkness peeled back like curtains, revealing a vast broken world beneath his feet, cities floating in the dark towers, cracked and falling statues the size of mountains, split in half, all covered in dust and silence. This was once a home, the voice said. This was once the center of everything. We ruled stars and time and space, but we were betrayed by one of our own. He wanted to be God. He brought the burners. They destroyed all. We sealed ourselves inside the void to hide, to wait, to survive. Stone looked across the ruins. He saw machines frozen in battle. He saw ships shaped like animals stuck in the air, like flies in ice. He saw bodies not human, but not far from it. He felt something stir in his chest, not furnace, sorrow, but anger. Why show me this, he asked, because the voice said, you are the answer. You are not made like the others. Do not break. You are not afraid to walk alone into death. You carry war like a torch, but also hope. The cube on his chest opened slightly. A beam of light shot upward. It formed a map in the air, not of Earth, not of the stars, but of something else. A plan, a path, a war. The voice continued. We'll follow you if you lead, but you must prove you are worthy. Stone stared at the light, then at the kneeling beings. He felt his own voice grow heavier. Then he said, show me the enemy. A gate opened before him. Not a door, not a machine, but a tear in the black. Through it he saw fire, not flames, but living fire creatures made of ash and screams. The burners, they floated across dead space, eating light and sound and life. They had no faces, only hunger, and they were moving not toward the void, but toward Earthstone's jaw tightened. Looked down at the beings who had once ruled galaxies. They looked back at him, not with pride, but with hope. Then Stone said, get up. We have a war to finish. The creatures rose, silent, deadly ready. The cube closed again. The map burned itself into Stone's mind. He would not go back alone. He would bring an army, not to invade, but to defend, to destroy what came before, to remind the stars that humanity was not a mistake. The void trembled and the voice spoke. One last time, this is not the end. This is the beginning of everything, and the human, the one they threw into the darkness like a weapon, had just been sharpened. Stone stood at the edge of a dead city, floating in blackness. The sky above was cracked like glass, frozen in time. The buildings stretched high and wide, but none touched the ground because there was no ground, only empty space holding everything together. Like invisible hands, the towers were made of silver and bone and stone, and some strange glowing metal that pulsed faintly, like it still remembered being alive. Every window was broken, every bridge collapsed, every statue headless. The streets were littered with armor pieces, weapons, shattered banners, torn and floating like feathers. He saw no blood, but he felt death not just the people, but a purpose of pride, of meaning. This was not a city that lost. It was a city that had been forgotten. The beings who followed him moved quietly, their long limbs barely stirring the air. They bowed their heads as they walked, as if they carried the weight of guilt on their shoulders. Stone said nothing as he moved through the ruins, but his eyes never stopped searching. Every crack, every sign, every fallen symbol told a story. That story was war, the kind of war that burns not just bodies, but beliefs. The kind of war that kills futures. They brought him to a chamber deep beneath the floating city, a room so large it could fit 10 Earth ships side by side. In the center stood a throne, black, simple, empty, not broken like everything else, not dusty, not rusted, not dead. Waited. The voice returned in his mind. This was the seat of the High One. He ruled the stars with mercy. Fire, he built this world with law and light, but his brother envied him. His brother wanted more. And so he opened the gate. He let the burners in, and they consumed everything. Stone stared at the throne. Then he looked at the walls. Carved into the stone were images, thousands of them. They showed tall warriors standing against rivers of flame, armies of light, clashing with beasts of shadow planets. Torn apart by claws and fire, and one final image, a circle of figures placing a cube into a vessel and sending it into Space Stone stepped closer. The cube looked like his, and the vessel it looked like. Earth, you sent this to us, he said. Yes, the voice replied. We had no other choice. The cube carried part of our code, part of our memory. It needed a new Minda strong one. Mind that could take the pain and hold the fire. A human mind stone felt something click inside his chest, not furnace doubt, but understanding you did not choose. Me, you created Mano. The voice said we gave you the spark, but you built the flame we tested. Many, you are the only one who returned, the only one who stood in the void and did not fall stone. Turned to the throne again, he did not scythe, placed his hand on it, and the room came alive. Walls glowed, the carvings moved, the throne pulsed the floor. Opened and revealed more, not weapons, not gold, but warriors frozen in crystal, hundreds of them, each with armor different from the last each. Holding weapons of light and storm, they sleep, the voice said, waiting for the signal, waiting for a leader who can bear the true stone. Looked at them one by one. He saw pain on their faces. Even in sleep, he saw hope. He saw fear. He saw loyalty. He knew what he had to do, but first he had to prove he was worthy. A great door opened behind him. A long hall stretched beyond in. It stood a single figure tall, armor dyes, burning white. This was the last of the High Guard. Does not follow orders, the voice said. He only follows strength stone. Walked forward, each step louder than the last. The guard raised his blade long and thin. Like a whisper of death stone, pulled the short metal rod from his side, and it grew into a staff, simple, brutal, and breakable. They clashed metal against light, force against speed. Every strike sent shockwaves down the hall. Stone moved like a man with nothing to lose. The guard moved like a god, but stone did not fall. He took it after height. But he stumbled, but he never stopped, and when the moment came, he struck the guard's blade aside and placed his staff against the being's throat. The guard did not fight. Back he dropped his weapon and knelt. You are the one, he said. Then he stood and turned toward the chamber. He raised his hand, and the crystals around the warriors began to crack one by one. They opened. The ancient soldiers stepped out, eyes, glowing weapons. In hand-waiting, the guard spoke again. Commander, give the order. Stone looked at the army before him, not human, not alien, but warriors, and he said one word. Prepare. The void trembled again, and far beyond the stars something felt it, something dark, something that remembered, and it began to move. Asterisk stone stood before the army that had slept for centuries. They looked at him with eyes that glowed like stars, yet carried the weight of forgotten war. Some looked ready to follow him, others looked unsure, a few looked angry. They had been the best, once proud warriors of the empire. Now they stood in broken armor, with faded symbols and silent weapons. Stone knew what he had to do. He had to make them believe again, not in gods or thrones or old glory, but in something stronger, in each other, in survival. In war, the throne room was no longer a place of kings. It became a training ground. Stone started with silence. No orders, no speeches, just movement. Stepped into the center and began to train. He swung his staff with precision. Each strike cut through air like thunder. He moved like a storm, fast, heavy, unstoppable. At first they only watched, then one step forward, challenged him. Stone did not hesitate. The fight was short, brutal. When it ended, the challenger lay on the ground, not broken, but breathing hard with new respect in his eyes. Another stepped up, then another. Each one tried, each one failed, but they all got back up, and soon the silence was gone. The room filled with the sound of weapons, clashing feet, pounding war cries. Rising. Stone taught them how to fall, how to rise, how to strike with purpose and defend with rage. He showed them Earth's way, not just with weapons, but with will. He made them carry weight, climb walls, crawl through fire made of light. He made them fight in teams, not. The lone trust became a weapon. Discipline became armor. Some resisted. They did not understand his ways. They laughed at his methods, called them crude, primitive. But when one of them broke rank and tried to challenge him with real hate in his eyes, Stone showed no mercy. He did not strike to kill. He struck to teach. And When the challenger woke on the ground, surrounded by silence and shame, he stood without a word and joined the line. Every warrior trained day and night. There was no time to rest. The enemy moved. Closer each moment, Stone watched their progress on the floating map inside the command hall. He saw fire trails moving through deep space burners. They did not come in one fleet. They came in waves like hunger endless. The cube on his chest kept glowing. Brighter each day, it fed on the energy around him, but it also shared something: images, memories, visions of battles lost and won, of weapons forgotten, of tactics used long before. Earth was born. Stone studied them all, then used what worked and ignored what did knows. Was not trying to rebuild the empire. He was building something new, something that could win one. Night, as he walked through the training chambers, he saw something that made him stop. Two warriors, once enemies, now sparred with laughter in their eyes. Another helped a younger one fix his armor, using parts from 3 different broken sets. A group sat around a fire, not real, but made of light, sharing stories and strange whispers that sounded like music they were changing. He was changing. Stone did not smile, but something in him grew warm. Then the alarm rang, not loud, but sharp, clear, urgent. A scout returned, one of their outer patrols, sent through a small gate. It was injured badly, half its body burned with marks no one had seen before, not even a old one. Stone ran to the healing chamber, where the scout lay floating inside a pod. Its voice was weak but steady. They are near. I saw them. I saw their eyes. They are more than fire now. They have shape. They have form. They have learned. Stone clenched his fists. He knew what that meant. The burners had changed. They had evolved. They had seen his army, and now they were preparing to. He turned to the warriors behind him. They stood silent, ready, waiting. No fear, just focus. Stone raised his voice. The time for drills is over. The enemy moves, and we must move faster tonight. We leave this place tonight. We step out of the void and return to the stars, not as ghosts, not as exiles, but as fire's fury, as one. Warriors slammed their weapons to the ground in answer. Echoed through the halls like thunder, shaking the air gates, opened across the chamber. Not one, not two, but many built by the ancient systems. Now, reawakened by the cube, each gate led to a different path, a different piece of space, a different battle stone. Pointed to the largest one, it glowed white like a silent scream. Through that gate was Earth. Through that gate was home, and through that gate was Warstone. Stepped forward. His army followed. Boyd did not try to stop them. It opened wider, as if proud, as if ready, as if it knew the broken empire was no more now. There was only one thing left: revenge. Far beyond Earth, in the cold silence of space, something old began to stir. The burners had no faces, no names, no hearts. They were not born, and they did not die. They were not creatures, but storms made of heat and hate. They did not sleep. They waited for centuries. They drifted through ruined systems, feeding on ash and fear. They left behind nothing but silence. Now that silence broke. A signal touch theme, a tremor in the dark, a message not in words but in action. The gate had opened. The human had returned, and he had brought something with him. The ancient codes still lived in the void, and now they pulsed again like blood through a dead body. Burners turned toward the signal, toward Earth, toward the void. They remembered what had once stopped them, the Empire. That had locked them away, the warriors who had stood against their fire. And now they saw those warriors again, not dead, not broken, alive, reborn. The leader of the burners took form, not a body, not a shape, but a presence. Its flames curled into armor. Its eyes lit with rage. Its voice rang in silence, like thunder with no sound. It had no name, only a purpose: to end all things. It sent out a call across the stars, and a million fires answered back. On Earth, deep in the command bunker, hidden under the Arctic ice, the warning lights came alive. Unknown energy detected. The system said not one, not two, but hundreds, thousands. A wall of heat and light and destruction heading straight toward the solar system. Generals stared in silence. No one spoke, no one moved until one old man leaned forward and said one word: Stone. They had heard his voice weeks. A go-away message through the void. Just 3 words: prepare for war. And now they understood. He knew. He always knew. Around the world, defense systems activated, satellites realigned, shields powered up, ships launched from secret bases hidden in oceans and mountains. But they all knew it would not be enough. First was strong, but it was not ready, not for this. Then the sky changed. High above Earth, a tier opened, not like the void, bright or controlled. Through it came the first of the ships, not Earth ships, alien old, sharp, and glowing like swords made of light and storm. They moved in perfect formation like wolves in the night, and leading them was a single figure stone. He stood on the front deck, his armor black, his eyes steady, his voice calm. He spoke not just to Earth, but to everyone. This is not your war alone. This is not just about Earth. This is about survival. I bring allies. I bring soldiers. I bring the who remember how to fight. Here we are ready, and we do not run. Earth Command connected with him. A general appeared on the screen, her face pale, her voice shaking, but her words firm. What do you need? She asked. Time Stone said, and trust. The general nodded. You have both Stone turned to. His army, they stood behind him and rose across the decks of their ships, each one armed, each one silent, each one ready to die. He raised his hand and pointed toward the stars. The burners were coming. Fast. Stone had seen their path on the map. The cube had shown him. He knew their plan. They would strike first at the outer moons, then Mars and Earth. He would not wait. He would meet them head on. He sent ships ahead to slow them small. Groups quick and sharp like knives, not to win, but to bleed them, to show them that this time the prey had teeth. In the void more gates opened, more warriors stepped through. Some rode beasts made of metal and fire, some flew with wings made of crystal, some carried staffs that cracked the air with each swing. The galaxy watched, hidden. Races on quiet worlds turned their eyes to the battle. Some prayed, some cheered, some feared, but all listened, because something was different this time there. The human leading them, and humans were not like the old ones. Humans did not quit, they did not kneel, they did not forget. First clash happened near Jupiter, a burner. Swarm met the outer patrol flames against steel screams, against silent stone. Watched from his ship as the first casualties fell. He felt each loss like a stone in his chest, but he did not flinch. He ordered the counter-strike. It was clean, precise, deadly. The burners did not expect unity. They expected chaos. They expected fear instead. They met a storm. Stone's fleet moved like one body. Ship every warrior followed without question, because they believed not in symbols, not in crowns, but in the man who had walked into the void and come back with fire in his veins. As the second wave crashed into the burners, the enemy felt something strange, not pain, not fear, but hesitation, because the human was not just fighting. He was winning asterisk, the skies above. Earth were never meant to hold war, but now they burned like a second. Sun flames danced between stars, and ships roared like dragons as they tore through clouds and silence. People looked up from cities and fields and oceans and saw lights they did not understand. Some ran for cover, some dropped to their knees, some simply watched frozen in awe and fear. And then they saw him, Stone. He stood on the front deck of the largest ship, not hiding, not afraid, not bending. His armor was cracked, his eyes were sharp, his voice silent but stronger than thunder. Behind him followed a fleet of warriors from a world no one remembered. They came not to rule, but to fight, not to conquer, but to protect Earth. Had sent Stone into the dark, and now he had returned with the light of war. The burners were not far behind. They came like a wave of fire with no shape, no mercy, no end. They burned the outer satellites, turned space stations into sparks, and pushed through every wall Earth tried to raise. But they had not faced resistance like this. An eon. Stone's fleet met them just beyond the moon. Alien ships twisted and turned like blades cutting through clouds of flame. Ancient weapons struck with silent fury beams of light carved holes into the dark, and warriors leapt from ship to ship as if space were ground. Stone moved first, always first. Never stayed behind orders. He led with fists and fire. He broke through lines with his staff, swung it like thunder. Split enemies like glass. He was no longer just a soldier. He was something more. Command watched from underground bunkers, their screens lit with fire and motion. They had never seen battle like this. They had never seen one man turn fear into fury, and strangers into shields. The general who once questioned him now stood in silence, eyelid voice steady. She knew now this was not the same man they had sent. This was a commander forged in silence, raised by shadows, crowned in war. The battle pushed closer to Earthstone. Knew they could not stop all of them in space. Some burners would break through, some would reach the ground, and so he prepared. He called for the ground forces. The warriors who had trained in the void stepped through gates onto the Earth. They landed in deserts, mountains, forests, cities, each one glowing with the light of forgotten stars. People watched them with fear at first, then wonder, then Something else, Hope. These were not monsters. These were protectors. They moved fast-built. Defenses in minutes taught human soldiers how to strike, how to hold, how to survive stone. Landed in the heart of the old city where the first gate had once been found, he looked at the sky and saw it split. The largest burner yet emerged from the clouds. It was not a shape, but a storm made of screams and shadow and hate. It dropped onto the ground and sent fire through the streets. Stone did not wait. He charged alone at first, but not for long. His warriors followed. Humans followed. Even civilians picked up arms and stood beside them together. They fought not for victory, but for survival. Every strike mattered. Every breath was earned. Buildings fell. Streets cracked. The air shook, but they held stone. Reached the heart of the fire and met the burner face too. Face it spoke without words. You are alone. You are flesh. Your weak stone gripped his staff and replied with action. He drove it into the core of the creature and poured every memory, every scream, every lesson into that one strike. The burner howled, but it did not fall, not yet. Then the cube on his chest opened fully for the first time. It shined brighter than the sun and sang with the voice of the old empire. The warriors around him raised their weapons, and the light spread it wrapped around the burner. And told not just light, but will stones, will human will, the will to fight even when broken, the will to stand when all else falls. The burner cracked and screamed and shattered not into fire, but into silence. The battle paused, every eye turned to stone. Stood there, breathing slow, his armor smoking his hand, still gripping the staff. Enemy pulled back, they felt it. For the first time, lost the burners retreated into the sky like a wave pulled by the moonstone. Did not chase, not yet. He turned to the people of Earth, to the leaders, to the soldiers, to the strangers, and said, we are not finished. This is not the end. This was their warning. The real war has not begun, but we are ready. He looked at the stars. The gate still open, still burning. He knew what waited beyond, and he would not run. He would return again, and this time he would end it. The stars were not peaceful anymore. They trembled like drums, waiting for war to begin. The gates opened wider than ever before spilling light and power across the galaxy. Stone stood at the edge of everything, his army behind him, his planet below him. His enemies ahead. He had fought many battles, but this was different. This was not about saving Earth. This was about stopping something that would never stop. The burners had tasted fear, and they hated it. They had lost one battle, and now they gathered in numbers so large, even the sky seemed too small. They came not in waves, but in storms, in shapes of beasts and shadows and fire. They roared through space without sound, filling the void. With their hunger stone looked at them, and felt nothing, no fear. No doubt, no hesitation, only purpose. He turned to his warriors. Each one stood ready. Their armor was cracked, their weapons worn, their eyes steady. They had followed him through silence, through pain, through fire, and now through the last gate he raised. His hand and the cube on his chest pulsed with ancient light. It sent one final signal through the fleet day. Signal that reached deep into the heart of every ship. Every soul, every breath of courage left in the galaxy. This is it, he said without words. Fight not to win, but to finish. He stepped through the gate, and they followed. The space beyond was wrong. Colors. Twisted shapes, bent, time cracked, and flowed like water, but they did not stop. Stone flew forward his staff, glowing like a star, burning with the memory of every loss and every promise. The first line of burners came at them, claws out, fire-wide. Stone hit first, splitting the lead creature in two with a single strike. His army broke through the front like a blade through ice ships clashed. In chaos, metal screamed, energy exploded. Warriors flew between wreckage and flame. No side gave ground, but one side had reason. That was the difference. The burners had rage. Stone's army had something stronger. They had each other, and they had him on the ground of a shattered world. In the center of the enemy swarm stood a throne of bone and fire. The source, the first flame, the mind behind the storm. Stone landed near it, his boots cracking the ash, his breath steady. The creature that waited was taller. Then towers wings of smoke, claws of steel, eyes of endless fire. Looked down at him and spoke inside his skull. You are nothing, you're dust, you're a delay. Stone did not speak. He walked forward, step by step, slow and clear. The cube opened again, light rose from it, but not just light voices from the old empire, from the warriors who had fallen, from the people who had sent him. They all spoke through him. Now we remember. We rise, we do not break. The creature screamed, and the world shook its scent waves. of heat and hate toward him, Stone ran left, swung his staff, and struck again and again, each blow carving history into the flame. The creature fought back every strike like a mountain falling, every scream like thunder tearing the stars, but Stone kept going even when burned, even when bleeding, even when the staff cracked in his hands. He kept going because he had made a promise, because he was the last line, because he was human and humans finish what they start. Behind him, his army kept pushing, they tore through the enemy with fury and fire, and Unity Earth sent more ships. Other races, once silent, now rose they, saw hope and joined the fight together. They lit the dark together. They turned war into a roar that echoed across systems. Stone reached the throne and planted what was left of his staff into its heart. The cube shattered and the light exploded, did not burn it. Healed it, silenced the fire, not with fear, but with memory, with peace. The burners screamed and vanished, one by one, until only silence remained. Stone stood alone in the center of a crater of ash and starlight, his armor gone, his body torn, his eyes still open. He had done it. The final war was over. Galaxy exhaled back on Earth. The sky cleared, the stars looked brighter, ships returned, warriors, rested people cheered, but none louder than the silence that followed. They found Stone, days later, alive, barely. He opened his eyes and whispered one word, done he. Refused the throne, he refused the crown, he asked for one thing, to go home, so he did. He walked the earth not as a soldier, not as a leader, but as a man who gave everything and still stood. Statues were raised, songs were sung, books were written, but he did not care for any of that. He only cared that they were safe and far above the clouds in a quiet part of space. The last gate closed with a whisper, never forced, never feared, just finished, because they had sent one human into the void, and he had come back with an army, but more than that, he had come back with hope.